Hi, this is Jeff with Northern Tail Sharpening, and I'd like to go through this Oster Clipper here, just in case your blades came back from the sharpener and they don't cut. They cut on this clipper when you sent them to the sharpener, but when they came back they didn't, and there's probably a reason for that. Most of the times when you ship blades off to the sharpener, they're dirty. There's enough buildup on them where they're tight, and the cutter's hard to move back and forth. And what that does, that takes a strain, it puts a real big strain on the hinge, and it kind of wears out your lever. But there's other components in the head of the Oster Clipper that we have to look at to take up the slack. First thing I would do when the blades don't cut, especially 7s and 10s. For what reason I don't know, but 7s and 10s are about the same weight, and of course 15s and 30s, but they'll cornrow or something, and that's caused by the hinge. How do you check a hinge? You just close it like that. And if you can pull that back at all with your fingers, it's almost to the point where I can pull it back. These things are made to keep that blade tight up against the clipper, and if there's any slack in this at all, it's going to make the blades cornrow, because what happens is the bottom moves back and forth. You can actually see the bottom moving back and forth, and so the blade does this on there all the time. But this one here is still a good hinge. Next thing I check is the lever. You can look and see on this lever, especially that down where you can look at it, it's kind of rounded. You can see that's rounded, and we're going to grab it now. We're going to move it. See how it moves back and forth? That's a lot of slack. Your cutting system's sloppy, and that's what's happening here. This is something that nobody checks, but they'll call the sharpener up and they'll say, well, blades don't cut. What we're going to do is we're going to take the top off of this. This is something you should do once a month, once every couple months, at least once every quarter. These components don't last forever. Look on the inside. Actually, there's no grease on this unit at all. Can you see that right there? Can you see that sloppiness? So what happens is when the lever moves the blade all the way over to one side, it hesitates when it comes back because of that slop in there, and causes cornrows and causes your blades to drag. You know what we've got to do now is we're going to take this. We're going to take these components out. First thing we're going to replace is the lever. The lever only costs about $4 or $5, and it's easy for you to put in. The next component we're going to change is the link gear. The link gear fits right on top of this gear right here. It's your resin gear, and I don't know if you can see there or not. It's got a lot of resin gear. It's got a lot of teeth in it, and sometimes when you put blades on that are really tight, what happens is that screw gear on the inside. See that little screw gear down in there? It will take and it'll put a ridge right through the middle of that. Everything in this head costs about $3 or $4, but this fiber gear here costs about $10 to $15, because they know that you're gonna screw it up. But if you're an old school groomer and you remember years ago, these things were metal. So no matter what blade that you put on there, it was going to take off with it. It was going to make it cut. But today we have a sloppy link gear. The fiber gear is okay. We're going to take and put it back in. Except this time we're going to put just a little bit of grease on it. I use lithium grease. It lasts a little bit longer. To me it does. It doesn't get hot. I don't, one time I put, and I'm going to take a little bit of grease and put on the side of that top of that fiber gear, because that's where the next gear that goes in is the link gear. There we go. link gears in. Taking a little bit of grease and putting it on top of the link gear. There's a little, you can see that little place right there. That's where part of the lever is going to go, and the other part of the lever is going to go up here where the pivot point is. Just put a little bit of grease there too. Best thing to do is stick it on the front first, like that, and then you can stick a screwdriver in there, I don't know if you can see that, and move the link gear back to where it fits on the lever. Sometimes it takes a couple tries. There we are. Now remember before how loose it was? It's not loose now. See that? Changing those components out tightened up the whole cutting system. You've got to check this. When blades come back from the sharpener, they have the factory tension on them, and they're not tight anymore. And in any loose situations in your cutting system, those looser blades are going to bring it out. You know, when they're set at factory specs, they're going to bring out all these inclusions in your clipper. So why is a lever important? Let's see if we can get down here and see this. What happens is if your lever is rounded on the end, see the space that it makes there? It's pretty sloppy. And you take a new lever, like the one we just put on, it's not sloppy. See that? So it actually fits that slot in the cutter of the blade. And if you don't change that out every month or two, or a couple months, whenever it gets worn, it's going to make a loud clatter. Your blades are going to drag, or they're going to cornrow. So there's a lot of things that you got to think about. I mean, the maintenance of your clipper is your responsibility. It's not the sharpener's. If you're going to make the sharpener come over and fix your clipper, he might charge you some money for that. So now that we've got these components changed out, we've got it all greased up, put the top back on, put the screws in it. Got 2 screws, one on each side. Tighten it up, plug it in, try it out. You can put the screws in. That's it. That's how you check an Oster A5 clipper, single speed, double speed, turbo. They all act the same. They all have the same components in them, and you have to check your clipper at least every month to make sure it's running properly. Because if you have these bad components in there, if you have bad levers and link gears in them, your blades are going to drag and cornrow. Okay, you can pick these parts up at any supplies place like Pet Edge, Ryan's. They all sell them, and you should have a couple of these. These are expendable parts. I'd have 2 or 3 of these levers, and I'd have a couple of these links too, because when you can take your system and try to move it like that, and it moves back and forth like it did before we changed these out, you're going to have problems with the blades, guarantee it. Anyway, there we go. Thanks for watching. This is Jeff with Northern Tail Sharpening.